Well, when we don't have options, we're limited. And so if we feel like we're under pressure because maybe you're looking at another home, you see something you like, now what happens is that you might take an option and I can't give you a ton of help at that point because I'm not legally contracted to help you, right? So you have nobody to really talk to. An attorney's job, right? A lot of sellers think, oh, I'll just talk to my attorney. Well, the attorney's job is to protect you, not to get the deal done. Like they get paid regardless of whether your home sells. So like that could be a possible thing to consider. Now they're like, oh, and then once the buyer is under contract, like there's a timeline to manage, right? There's inspections, appraisals, financing things, there's title things, there's, all these things that we have to deal with the government to make sure that legally the process transfers to the new buyer. And if any one of those goes wrong, you could potentially be sued if you didn't do the things you need to do, and the buyer could potentially walk away without having any ramifications. Hey, what's up? I wanted to make you a quick video here. I know it's bright and early, so love the hair. So one is, the reason why most people think that off market is better is because they hate agents and they think agents don't do anything and they think that they won't have a difference. So the first thing is as somebody stated, is we have to ask them the question of, hey, that's awesome that you got an offer. We gotta validate them. It's true. Like, hey, that's offer. You had somebody offer you an offer. Would it be okay if I shared a couple of different takes or a couple of different perspectives that oftentimes people don't think about when it comes to taking an off-market property? And that way it might guide you to making the best decision to getting the most money for your property. And at 9 out of 10 times, we're going to say, oh my God, yes, that'd be great. So now you're going to say, hey, I was just curious. Was there anything specifically about this offer that you really loved? And they're going to be like, oh my God, I love this, and I love that, and I love this, and I love that, and I love this, and it's easy and it's simple. Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like a fantastic offer. I guess, is there anything you would change about the offer if you could? And they're going to say, well, we always wish we could have more money, but we're not greedy. Lies. Everybody wants more. We're not greedy, but we'd like this. Okay, cool. Well, let me share with you a couple of things that I've learned. Even though I'm a new agent, would it be okay if I shared a couple things with you, just so that you're protected? And it's true. They're going to say, yeah. So now you're going to pull out a purchase and sale agreement. Hey, this is a standard purchase and sale agreement, right? And now you start going through it line by line, and this is this, and this is that, and this is this, right? So unpack the purchase and sale agreement, and then when you get to the part where you have contingencies, pull out like 16 contingencies. Now, in an ideal world, like you're not going to have all of these, but if this is a savvy buyer, if they have a buyer's agent, which would be even worse for you because you're unprotected and you're unrepresented and you're going up against somebody who does this all day long, they're going to put a lot of these contingencies in there. What the contingency is going to do is the contingency is going to force you, right? The contingency is going to force you to allow the buyer to have this, what we call a due diligence period. The due diligence period is where the buyer can come in and poke and prod, and they have an inspection, and they can have alternative inspections, and they can do this, and they can have financing things. And if something doesn't go perfectly the way you want it to, the buyer can back out, and it could take a week, it could take a month, it could take 3 months, and you get you have no ramification, you have no protection, you aren't able to do anything. Which means that if this were to happen, the time that they locked up your property, right, and you may not be in a rush, but the time that they take to lock up your property is actually wasted time. Now, most buyers, if they like your property, right, are you following with me so far? They're going to say, oh, I didn't even know that. Yeah, and that's just kind of like, you're my friend. I just, I asked some people in my office what could be the possible ramifications of selling a property off market, and this really nice Indian guy told me some of the things. So is that tracking? Is that making sense? And he's going to be like, yeah, that is making sense. Now you're going to go, okay, well, so like, that's one thing. The other thing is that, let's say that this person's savvy, right? And we don't know how many homes they've bought. They don't have to tell us. We don't know what their experience is. If they have an agent, right, that agent might be really good. They can lock your home up for a certain price, and they can now start to poke and prod doing an inspection and come back and ask for 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, $200,000 off, right? So they can come back and ask for an insane amount of repairs or an insane amount of money back. And when we don't have other options, right, it's kind of like if you go to your local bar and all they tell you is they have, Corona, and you wanted a Michelob Ultra and you wanted a beer, you're going to drink a Corona. Well, when we don't have options, we're limited. And so if we feel like we're under pressure because maybe you're looking at another home, you see something you like, because, now we start looking. Now what happens is that you might take an option, and I can't give you a ton of help at that point because I'm not legally contracted to help you, right? So you have nobody to really talk to. An attorney's job, right? A lot of sellers think, oh, I'll just talk to my attorney. Well, the attorney's job is to protect you, not to get the deal done. Like, they get paid regardless of whether your home sells. So like that could be a possible thing to consider. Now they're like, oh, and then once the buyer is under contract, like there's a timeline to manage, right? There's inspections, there's appraisals, there are financing things, there's title things, there's, all these things that we have to deal with the government to make sure that legally the process transfers to the new buyer. And if any one of those goes wrong, you could potentially be sued if you didn't do the things you needed to do, and the buyer could potentially walk away without having any ramifications, right? So now we start to poke holes. The last thing, which is probably like the most important to most people, is the fact that you're only marketing your home to one human being, right? So if one person is willing to pay you $1 million, it's possible in this neighborhood, and I just did a little bit of quick research, but it's possible in your neighborhood that if you have the right pricing strategy, right? There's different pricing strategies. So if you had the right pricing strategy, you might get 2 or 3 offers. And what I see from my research, and it was just really preliminary and basic, what I've seen is that in this neighborhood, people are getting 2 to 3 offers when they go with like aspirational or perceived market value based pricing. Is that something that you're okay with missing out on? Because what you could do is you could let them know, hey, I'm going to give you guys first right? I'm going to give you guys first crack, but we're going to go actually go ahead and list the house on the market. And I'm going to give you first crack to get to put an offer in. And if your guys' offer is super competitive with what else comes in, then I will let your agent know, or I will let you know that, hey, there are other offers, but because you wrote a strong offer and because you were here, I wanted to give you guys the first right to match it and beat it if you chose to. So you're never going to lose that buyer, but you're going to open up yourself to the market. And I guess like, what's the most important thing to you? Is it getting the home sold quick and easy, or is it getting the most money for your property? Because they're going to tell you, well, we want both. We want a quick and easy sale, but we also want the most money. Well, and I know I'm not an expert, right? Like I'm new. I've bought some properties. I've done this, I've done that. So what I did is I actually contacted one of my buddies, John, and John's actually sold a ton of homes in this neighborhood. Would it be okay if we came back, right? Always book the next step. Would it be okay if we came back at a later date, like maybe tomorrow or the next day? Because, when we have somebody that's interested in the property, time is of the essence. Would it be okay if we came back tomorrow or the next day? And I've already spoken to John. He's versed and ready to rock and roll, and just shared with you a few more details about whether or not you would want to even take this offer. And John's much more experienced, so he and his company, his team, are going to be able to give you a lot better guidance. I only want to do what's best for you. And would that be, would you find that helpful? And he's like, oh my God, of course I'd find that helpful. Or you could use a game plan frame. Hey, like, has anybody shared with you the 3 most important reasons about why you'd want to sell by owner or list with an agent? And he's going to be like, well, no. Oh, okay. Well, I actually spoke with my buddy John, and John said that, there's a couple of things that for some people it makes sense to go private, and for some people it makes more sense based off of what we talked about to get the home ready ASAP and get the house on the market to attract more buyers. John's really an expert in this neighborhood. I'm not. Would you find it helpful, like as a next step, if I could bring John in, we just do a quick little chat with you, share with you a couple of the things, and in that way you can make a better choice as to what would be best for you in your situation. 80 to 90% of the people should say yes to that, right? There's a couple of flows that you need to work on, but if you go in with that flow, you're going to crush people when they say FSBOs. Now, if you go in with the standard, oh, well, agents that sell, and you go in with that standard crap line, well, houses that sell on the market, they don't care. They don't care. But when you find out oh, well, we want, oh yeah, and I was doing some research, and I wasn't sure if you're aware of this, but are you aware that homes that have exposure to the market, the entire buyer universe, not just one buyer, when they have exposure to the entire buyer universe, not just one buyer, are you aware that those houses actually sell for 6% more? So oftentimes, the buyer's going to have an agent, so the buyer's going to have a representation, right? And they're going to want the commission to come out of the proceeds from the listing, right? And so oftentimes a lot of sellers say, well, we don't want to pay the additional commission, but it actually makes sense because you're going to end up netting 3 to 5% more. Does that make sense? And they're like, oh, I never knew that. Yeah, and here's the article if you wanted to reference it, but the article is written that homes that sell on the market that get the buyer exposure. So now you're not saying, oh, well, I want my commission. You're saying that this is a benefit, and the other benefit is that you're going to get protection from me and from my buddy Crystal, and she's the rock star, right? So I'm just going to be kind of there watching, helping, guiding, giving some input, but she's the one who's going to be really, conducting the train. I'm just kind of the stewardess on this train, right? Just depending on your relationship, you have fun with it. I've used this frame a dozen times. It's gotten me probably 65, 70% of the listings. And sometimes I just told the person hey, you actually got a killer offer. And I don't know that we can actually get you more by listing it because you actually negotiated a killer offer for yourself. So check that out. Let me know if that helps you. This is what we train inside of my company, the Real Estate Sales Academy. So how to basically reframe conversation so that we're not the salesperson telling the prospect what to do, but we're actually having a two-way conversation, two-way dialogue, and guiding the prospect. Let me know if that was helpful. I know it was a little long, but it's a real conversation that takes more than just a couple sentences.